Sion had always felt like he was floating in stagnant water with no direction to go. It had always been drinking and playing around all day for him, and he's fine with that, until he met Woo Seungwon. At first, Sion was just like a cute younger brother he likes to spoil from time to time. But as they spent more time together, could the younger brother turn to a younger lover? Our story starts with our MC floating in a huge and deep lake. Well, not literally, of course. It's more like how he felt from time to time, with no place to set his feet down, and having no idea if he's spinning or just staying still. Back to reality, we see a couple of guys talking about someone who, after receiving his PhD in business administration, went abroad to further his studies. After returning to Korea, instead of just inheriting his family company, he also established a new entertainment company and even branched out to the sports industry. What's interesting, though, is that ever since his takeover, the only idol group he has kept is Stardust. They're not quite famous locally, but they're starting to gain influence in the international scene, which is the real deal, if you really think about it. Let's just think of Suju and BTS. We can also add Blackpink and aespa, since I'm biased. Anyways, one of the gossipers orders 2 glasses of Jack and Coke to the bartender, which the latter amicably takes. But then the customer in front of him suddenly curses out loud and comments how his drink tastes bitter tonight. He then asks the bartender if the petard, whoever that is coming tonight at the bar. The bartender had no choice but to tell a white lie that he was told the petard might drop by later. This made the customer very upset that Mr. Bartender didn't let him know in advance and declared that he was leaving. The bartender tried to stop him, but the customer had already made up his mind, since he was pretty sure that staying would just mean that there was a 50% chance he'll get pissed off later on. And so, he just upped and left in a hurry and didn't even settle his bills. Well, he did say he'll settle it next time. Anyway, the bartender helplessly called him back, but to no avail. It turned out that he conspired with the said petard, whose real name is Yeho, to keep the said customer there until he came. But all thanks to the blabbermouths, the plan was ruined. Mr. Bartender was clearly upset, although the blabbermouths didn't really care. In fact, one of them just started fantasizing about the customer earlier and regretted not approaching him. But then his friend, being the good friend that he is, told him that there's no way it'll ever work out. After all, why would someone who looks like an idol ever interact with a pleb? As for the said customer, and this man was MC, he's now back on the street, still mumbling about his drink getting ruined. Sion was fumbling with his phone, so he could call a driver, and didn't notice the guy who was about to bump into him, until he did. The said guy seemed to be his type because he unconsciously dropped his phone after the brief moment their eyes met. As cliche and cringy as that may sound, we have to deal with it, since that's part of this manhwa's plot. Anyways, a crack was heard after the apple dropped. And since that wasn't enough misfortune, just as he was about to pick it up, a scooter suddenly drove by and did the finishing move. Sion cursed loudly and angrily at the driver, who didn't seem to notice what he did, nor did he hear Sion going off. At least the guy who bumped into him was decent enough to pick up the phone and apologize. And since this looked like such a cliché first meeting event from some cliché romance novel, Sion's first words were to ask for the guy's account number. And since we don't want it to be too obvious, Sion explained that since it was the guy's fault that he dropped his phone, he'll have to pay half of the repair fee. The guy then admitted that he didn't have money. So Sion told him he should pay with his body, if that were the case. The guy hurriedly explained that he can't pay at the moment since it's not yet payday. Concluding that the guy is probably a university student with a part-time job to make ends meet, he decided to give him some slack and asked for his phone number first, handing him another phone as he did. Before you guys get confused, the dude is not some plebeian like most of us. So, of course, he had 2 phones, one for personal use and the other for business. And just like that, the 2 of them exchanged phone numbers, agreeing to meet after the end of the month, once the guy received his paycheck. Sion saves his number under the name Destroyer, together with his real name, Woo Seungwon, and warns him not to run off, because he will just chase him down to the ends of the world, if he does. In fact, he'll also come after the writer from earlier. Later that night, Sion arrives at his place and is welcomed with a bunch of parcels from someone named Lee Songtae. After complaining about being sent the entire collection of new products, Sion just leaves the boxes by the front door and takes off his shoes. He has a bunch of trash bags lying around, and remembers that he was supposed to be looking for a housekeeper. Sion then poured himself a drink as he opened the tell and complained about his unlucky day. As the news about some swimmer named An Chae-ki-won is being reported, Sion's thoughts are lingering on Seungwon, who is definitely his type. He then starts reflecting on the fact that he asked to be paid back using his body, wondering if he seemed like trash for even suggesting that. Days went by, and Sion finally received a message from Seungwon asking for his bank account number so he could send him the payment. But since this is his chance to meet his eye candy again, Sion tells him that he prefers to get the payment in person, so they should just meet up. The arranged location was a cute cafe that students frequent. Sion eagerly waited for Seungwon, who looked so flashy. He dressed up to impress. So just imagine his surprise when the person he was waiting for finally arrived, and it turned out that he was, in fact, still a high school student. Sion was speechless at first, dumbfounded by the fact that Seungwon was still a high school student and a minor. He just doesn't look the part. Anyways, Seungwon was just about to take out the money when Sion told him that it was all right since he doesn't take money from kids. Sion wondered why someone like Seungwon would wander near the gay bar where they met before. And so, Sion started lecturing him about how scary the world is for minors who do indecent part-time jobs in Itaewon. This annoyed Seungwon, who then claimed that he'd be an official adult in about a month and that he earned the money legally without doing any weird part-time jobs. And so, Sion then asked why Seungwon was in such a place. When they bumped into each other, Seungwon explained that he was supposed to meet his friend at that time, but got lost. It was a good thing that a lot of very friendly men approached him then. One of them even offered to help him go to the right place. Hearing his innocent choice of words, Sion just had to ask if Seungwon was gay or not. Unfortunately, innocent and oblivious little one is, in fact, not gay. Sion was really disappointed since he had first thought of making Seungwon pay with his body by next year. And we're all clear what he meant by that, right? Anyways, since Sion said the comment out loud, Seungwon heard it and agreed to use his body instead, if that's what Sion prefers. After all, he's confident with using his body, since he's in an athletic club. Seriously, this kid cracks me up. Or have I just been reading too much BL manhwas? Sion is on the same page as I am, though, but decided not to taint one's innocence, so he didn't say anything. An idea, however, came to mind when Seungwon said that he was in an athletic club, and so Sion took him up on his offer to use his body to pay him back. Fast forward to 3 months later, we are back to Sion's place, where he's making out with a blondie by the entrance door, and then asking if he wants to get another drink, or they get right into it. The other guy flirtatiously chose the latter option, only because Sion is so handsome. Not long after, the two of them had finished washing up, and the blondie just had a comment on how neat and clean the place was. Sion dismisses it by saying that he just had a really good housekeeper. This got the blondie curious as to what Sion does for a living or if he's born with a silver spoon. Instead of answering, however, Sion just urged them to get down to business instead of chatting, which the visitor welcomed without complaint. It seems like blondie is a reba, so he asks Sion if he wants to receive it first, or should he? But there really isn't a need to choose, because Sion is someone who only gives and never receives. So does this mean that Seungwon will turn him into a Nico? Because no part of Seungwon gives away being a possible Nico. I'm definitely reading too much BL manhwa. The next day comes, and we see Woo in swimming trunks, after he just got out of the pool, gloriously sporting his yummy-licious abs that I'm pretty sure Sion will drool over. Excuse me while I wipe mine. Moving on. An older female friend in a swimsuit invites Seungwon to eat BBQ with their friends after their afternoon training. Seungwon declined the invitation, since he's got a part-time job today. His friend is surprised that Seungwon is still doing his part-time job when they're already so close to the draft match, not to mention he had supposedly already paid everything back. Seungwon explained that he continued doing it since the pay was good. This made her feel bad for him. If only the prize money for the matches were good enough, he wouldn't have to go look for part-time jobs and could just focus on training. Seungwon thinks the same, although it doesn't seem like he's really upset about it. Later in the afternoon, Seungwon arrives at Sion's place. He was surprised to see Sion home, who seemed to have been dozing off on the sofa. Sion was complaining about his head hurting, which earned him a scolding from Seungwon. And being the smartass that he is, of course, Sion just had to talk back. Not that Seungwon really takes his words seriously. Instead, he just tells him that he'll start cleaning the bedroom first, so Sion can just rest some more in the meantime. Seungwon started by doing the laundry, after which he moved on to cleaning the bed. He saw strands of blonde hair on the bed, and remembered that last week it was red, wondering if perhaps Sion collects partners based on the rainbow colors. Looking back, Won-won's first impression of Sion is brutal and harsh, but after he gets to know him better, he realizes that he isn't that bad. Plus, he pays well. Although he has terrible eating and sleeping habits, I feel attacked. I'm just the innocent narrator. Please spare me. Well, Won-won also couldn't help but think that Sion could lead a healthy lifestyle if he just worked out twice a week. Oi, a combo. So harsh. Underhanded attacks aside, Won-won noticed quite a number of rubber packets in the trash bin and couldn't help but feel bad for Sion's future lover. If he stays the Tachi, that it is. Not long after, Sion's place is back to being sparkly clean, save for the living room where Sion is. Won-won shakes his boss awake as he tells him to sleep in his bed, since he needs to clean the living room now. After Sion sat up, Won-won asked him if he had eaten anything for his hangover, but apparently he didn't, and then he went on complaining that his stomach hurts so much it feels like he's dying. Sion then compliments Won-won, saying how he looks cute whenever he's wearing an apron. But it seemed like the younger man had heard this one too many times because he seemed unfazed, even when Sion added that Won-won's face is totally his type, and here we are, awing at their cute banter. And so, late afternoon turned to night. Sion had just woken up again, but he still felt awful. He hated this time of the day the most, not that there's any time of the day that he doesn't. For him, it's the same, whether it's night or day. Whenever he feels like he's floating in nothingness, he feels awful. His whole body felt numb, and the only thing that he was aware of was the fact that he was slowly sinking into the bottomless lake. The worst part of it all is the fact that he had brought it upon himself. Sometimes he just feels like closing his eyes and hoping to never wake up. Only he also knows that this is a routine, and it's just bound to repeat itself over and over again. It's his pain which he could never escape from. Unless he gets help, and it gets cured by something delicious. Sion once again opened his eyes as he smelt something delicious from the kitchen. Turns out, before leaving for the day, Won-won went shopping in the nearby mart and made hangover soup for Sion. According to the note that he left, that is, which also contained unsolicited advice to drink less and to start exercising. Sion found the gesture cute and felt lucky since he was too lazy to order food anyway. The best part, though, is that the soup was super delicious too. Fast forward to the following week. It was already 10 minutes past 6, and the takeout sushi on the dining table wasn't as fresh as it was supposed to be anymore. Sion is upset that Won-won is running late today, of all days, just when he decided to treat him. Just when Sion was getting more upset, because his housekeeper didn't even contact him, his phone started buzzing. Turns out Destroyer has now graduated to Sunbeck, but even as Sion answers the call, he's threatening him with words. Anyways, Sion is only calling him now to inform him that he couldn't come to work today. Sion heard irate voices from the background and asked about Sion's whereabouts. Sion explained that he was in the police station, not because he did something stupid, but because his sister got caught up with a molester from her review center. That didn't sit right with Sion at all. So he asked which police station before Sion could hang up. Not long after, Sion arrived at the station, and he immediately looked around for Sion and his sister, although it didn't take him long since someone was already being loud and making a fuss. The father of the accused molester is insisting that it was because of the CCTV's angle that it looked bad. The police officer tried to calm the father down, but he just won't give it a rest. And so Sion's sister, Si-young-hae, just had to step up as well and insist that the offender really touched him. In fact, it didn't just happen once or twice either. Now, the trash's father turned to Si-young-hae and started calling her names and criticizing her behavior, as if it wasn't their side who started it all. The older man blames the fact that they don't have a father for her act undisciplined, insisting that since she's poor, she should just keep quiet and not act up. Obviously, the molester took after his father. Curse for me, guys, because this garbage doesn't deserve censored cursing from me. Sion was just about to make his peace when someone's hand stopped him just in time. Sion stood in front of the Si-young siblings and declared that they should just settle the matter through his lawyer. When the trashy father asks who he is, Sion introduces himself as their guardian and tells him to just bring in their lawyer. The direction of the wind changed, and now the trashy father tells them that there's no point in bringing in lawyers since minors can't be charged because they're under the protection of the law. Sion then says that the kid looks older than 14, and the trashy father should just shut up since he doesn't even know what age one can be criminally penalized. Having been called stupid in his face, the trash's father now criticizes the way Sion talks to him, which Sion just ignores. Instead, he tells the trash how he looks like a habitual offender, so he should prepare himself. especially since his lawyer is super good. It's safe to say Sion and the Seung siblings left the father-son duo trembling. Once the trio got inside Sion's car, the owner started cursing at the trash, even hoping that they would get into a car accident on their way back. Our dear viewers, please know that we do not condone this behavior, although they do deserve it, and it would be divine punishment if it did happen. Anyways, Sion really seemed to have some beef for tards who commit these types of crimes, and I could never agree more. As long as there's no hot Simi and adorable Yuki involved. Yes, yes, I'm rotten, and so are you. Seung-won is dumbfounded at the sight of Sion, while Seon-hae could only second her savior's opinions. After Sion finally calmed down, satisfied with the fact that he could punish their likes this time, he asked the siblings for their address so he could drive them home. Seon-hae gratefully thanks Sion for his rescue and even calls him boss as she did. This makes Sion feel awkward, but he dismisses it all the same. Seung-won then tells his boss that there's no way they can afford to hire a lawyer, not that Sion minded. After all, Sion offered the services of his lawyer due to his vendetta against those types of S-bags. This chivalry earned Sion points from Seon-hae. She then curiously asked her brother what his boss does for a living. Unfortunately, Seung-won had no answer for her. Not long after, they safely arrived at the siblings' neighborhood. Sion was just about to bid farewell, after assuring them that he'd have his lawyer contact Seung-won soon. But then Seon-hae insists that he join them for dinner, or a cup of coffee at least. Sion was unwilling at first, but the duo wouldn't take no for an answer. Seon-hae even boasted that she makes killer fried rice. Anyways, after being forced to come, the trio was welcomed by the youngest sibling at their house. After Seon-hae explains that their visitor is Seung-won's boss, the maknae respectfully bows his head and calls him boss. This made things awkward for Sion once again, although this time he decided to address it properly. After reprimanding the youngest, Sion also tells Seon-hae to just call him Oppa, which in turn also makes Seung-won want to address him as Hyun as well. And since Sion has a crush on Won-won, being addressed like that made him blush, especially when he smiled at him as he did. Although Won-won seemed oblivious to the fact. Anyways, as Sion starts to look around the house, he notices a poster of Starlight's Ha-jin on the wall. At once, memories of Ha-jin, as well as apparently other members of Starlight, came rushing in, both happy and sad times. Sion would have stayed immersed in them, if it weren't for Seung-won calling out to him. After making a crude joke of Sion looking down on their shabby house, Seung-won explains that since Seon-hae doesn't have a room of her own, she puts her idol posters all over their house, including his room. Missing the chance to explain himself, Sion decided to just change the subject and ask about their father. At first, he thought that he was just in the hospital, seeing as there was a framed photo on the wall with messages for their father to get well soon. But it turned out that he had already passed a few years ago, after his cancer had relapsed. His death was hard for Seung-won, since it was his father who taught him to swim. It even came to the point where he was thinking of quitting. This agitated Sion since he's really against Seung-won quitting, but the younger man assures him that he didn't quit swimming and that he will continue to do well. After all, he likes the sport a lot, and he's good at it. Shortly after, Seon-hae calls them for a kimchi fried rice dinner. After a little teasing from big brother Sion, Sion found out that Seon-hae is especially fond of Ha-jin among her idols. Fast forward to when it is time for Sion to head home. Won-won walks him to his car and thanks Sion for his help earlier. He promises to repay Sion someday, too. Sion jokingly suggests that perhaps he's going to use his body as well. Seung-won immediately replies that he will. In fact, he's been waiting for a long time to do that. Sion blushed, thinking that perhaps Won-won was finally on the same page as us. Unfortunately, he still isn't. This time, Won-won is talking about exercising, which he is pretty confident about teaching Sion. Disappointed, Sion just told him that he'd think about it, and drove away. On the drive home, Sion is frustrated by the fact that Won-won is toying with him, while acting innocent and oblivious. He's such a flirt, befitting his looks. Anyway, shortly after, he receives a call from someone informing him that the interiors of the king's palace apartment are done. The caller then urged him to check the place, so he could set the rent price. Meanwhile, in a different part of the city, we finally get to have the face of the Bitar named Yeho from Chapter 1. It seems like he had been trying to contact Sion, even getting a hold of both his numbers, but he just won't pick up. His secretary suggested that they actively look for him, but Yeho discouraged it. After all, knowing Sion's personality, that resort would just make him run away. That said, he decided that they should just observe how things go for now. When Sion got back home, it was already very late. Thinking back to what he had seen in the Woo residence, although it was true that things had started going downhill for the family after Daddy Woo died, the ones that remained were still as close as ever and relied on each other. Sion knows that he's not in the position to feel it, but he still can't help but get envious of them. Fast forward to Sion's visit to the king's palace apartment. The person in charge of the renovation proudly shows it off. Since the unit faces south, the sun's rays get in nicely, and thanks to the wallpaper's color, the place looked even brighter. She said it's easier to rent out a place that's exposed to sunshine. After all, light is essential for living. At that moment, Sion seemed to have an epiphany. When the nice lady suggested raising the rent on the place, Sion said no, because he wanted to live in it instead. Not long after, Sion and the nice lady parted in the building's parking lot. Sion bid her safe travels and promised to make sure she got paid for her commission. Sion then sends a message to Seungwon asking him when they could start training. Right after he presses send, Sion has second thoughts, but then he also decides that it's about time he puts a stop to his nightlife. Plus, this is a great opportunity, since he shouldn't have left his current house a long time ago. A few days later, we see Sion sprawled in the grass as he took a break, complaining that his heart was about to explode. A couple of young athletes made their way towards him, asking if he was already done after just one lap. Sion admitted that he couldn't do one more, since just one lap had already made him half dead. Apparently, after he sent the message to Seungwon that day, the young man made Sion do a couple of tests, after which he was told that she should only do light cardio and equipment-less weight training. It's also vital for Sion to regulate his sleep-wake cycle by setting a daily routine. This means that Sion is supposed to come to his school on time and join the athletes in a regular training. Sion's training menu is considered light, but for someone like him, he sees it as Seungwon giving him a hard time since day one. Just in time, Seungwon runs past him and asks him if he wants to do another lap, but Sion refuses. Once again, the older man emphasizes that he's dying. Seungwon doesn't take it seriously, since it's been a week since Sion started this routine. Sion then asks the young athletes from earlier if Seungwon ever gets tired. It seems to him that all swimmers are monsters. They then explain that Seungwon is already on top of the top monsters, and not just among them in their group, but in the whole swimming world. Not only does he have natural-born talent, but he also puts a lot of work into training, that no one can catch up to him. In fact, he's sure to win a medal in this year's Olympics. The claim made Sion wonder if Seungwon was really that good. After all, he's never heard of any news about Seungwon and only knows of An Chae-hwan and Lee Pyun-ki. In fact, he had seen a couple of their ads too. The athletes looked at each other, unsure if it was something that they should be talking about with an outsider. In the end, they still gave Sion on all the deets. As it turns out, barely anyone knows of Seungwon because he doesn't have any sponsor who can manipulate the media for him. An Chae-hwan is a prodigy, to begin with, but Seungwon's greatness was only discovered in his late teens, so he was already behind. As for Lee Pyun-ki, he isn't even as good as the media portrays him to be. This is why we shouldn't always believe what the media says. Anyway, the three athletes all have specialties for the main event of freestyle, but since only 2 athletes can participate in the same event in the Olympics, the Swimming Federation only supports the other 2, thanks to the connection of their agencies. Meanwhile, Seungwon was pushed to compete in a less popular butterfly stroke event just so An Chae-hwan, who was about to retire due to his injury, could participate in the freestyle. Although there's still the second draft match in 2 months, it's just for show, since the Federation has no plans of accepting any more applicants for the freestyle. Just with that explanation, even a civilian Sion could see that what the Federation is doing is an abuse of their power. They were in it for their gains, and didn't even care about stomping on an athlete's rights and dreams. After once again being presented with a case of power abuse, Sion is itching to make it right, although he was told that there was no way for the Federation to be sued legally, and that Seungwon's only chance is if he gets signed to a powerful agency that can protect him. Unfortunately, before they could discuss the matter any further, Seungwon suddenly appeared behind them. In no time at all, the young athletes started running again for another lap. As for Sion, he asks Seungwon when his match is, since he wants to see it for himself. Seungwon was skeptical at first. After all, it's not like Sion is interested in swimming. Sion then explains that he just wants to see him swim in person. Won then admits that he'll be happy if Sion does come, and promises to let him know of the venue and date later. And since he's such a tease, he even shows off his yummy-licious abs in the pretext of wiping his sweat. Before Won leaves to finish his workout, he scolds Sion for tempting the other athletes. Of course, Sion is flabbergasted at the accusations, since just seconds ago, it was Won who'd been tempting him. The audacity of the younger generation is just unbelievable. Fast forward to a few days later. We see Yeho having a handshake with Seungwon's coach, with the latter promising to look at their offer positively, since the conditions were good. Yeho then added that even though they're still new in the industry, they already have veterans with them and hopes that they could also work with Seungwon. After Yeho and his secretary left, the coach explained to Seungwon that Yeho was the third son of the Hoshin Corporation. Yes, the very same man who was gossiped about in Chapter 1, and the same person Sion does not want to see or talk to. As it turns out, Yeho used to be a jiu-jitsu athlete who was good enough to often win world championships. Even though Yeho's firm is new, it's also Seungwon's best chance to get support, to participate in the freestyle draft match without worrying about the federation's involvement. As the coach was saying praises of Yeho, Seungwon received a message from Sion asking for help in carrying the snacks he bought for the team. When Seungwon tells the coach that he has to go out for a bit, the older man gives him a 30-minute break. At the parking lot, Yeho and his secretary were talking about how they were certain that Seungwon would sign the contract with them. After all, they're the only agency that wouldn't be cautious about the Federation's involvement. But as if fate was trying to tell Yeho not to get too arrogant just yet, the driver's side of the car they just passed by opened, revealing Sion as he called out his housekeeper's name loudly. Yeho did not miss this and was quick to greet Sion, cheekily commenting how, despite Sion avoiding him so much, they still run into each other in the most unlikely place. The first thing that Sion had thought of to explain this coincidence was that Yeho had been stalking him. And, of course, this did not sit well with Seungwon, who was right beside him at this point and instinctively stood in front of Sion. Yeho lightheartedly brushed it off as Sion making a joke, while his secretary suddenly appeared from behind him to try to clear things up by handing his boss's business card to Sion. Sion was surprised to learn that Secretary Kim was still working for Yeho, but at least this let Sion let his guard down a bit. Upon seeing the card, Sion realized that today was really just a coincidence, and Yeho was actually from the company Seungwon had told him he would have a meeting with today. Sion then asked Seungwon if he had already signed a contract with the company. Although the meeting earlier went well, seeing how Sion is so hostile toward the company's CEO, it seems like this is a valid reason for Seungwon not to go through with the contract. Yeho was quick to notice that and tried to redeem himself. But with the way Seungwon is looking at him, it seems like it's already too late. Yeho then tries to ask Sion to clear things up, despite knowing that the latter is still very much upset with him and might actually just get things worse. At first, Sion just outright ignores Yeho and tells Seungwon he'll have to carry all the snacks back by himself. After this, he bluntly tells Yeho to get out of his face and not even show himself by accident. Sion also made it clear that he didn't want to help in clearing up the misunderstanding either and drove away in his car just like that. After Sion's car is finally out of sight, Yeho can't help but feel disappointed that even after all this time, Sion is still in fact upset with him, to the point that he refuses to call him Hyung anymore. Although there might still be a bit of hope, since he's still living in his current place, he doesn't understand where the stocking piece is coming from, though. As for Seungwon, he politely tells the duo to be on their way. Yeho then tries to explain to him that Sion is acting the way he did because of something that happened in the past and that he hopes this will not affect the talks that they had earlier. Seungwon said that it won't, but his face doesn't reflect that. Yeho then started prying on the relationship between Sion and Seungwon, especially since they have quite an age gap. Although Seungwon had the perfect answer for that, as he pointed out, Yeho and Sion are also in the same situation. In short, Yeho didn't explain their relationship, so why should he? Geez, this young man can sure be ruthless when he wants to. Yeho didn't push it, especially since they were running late for their next appointment. Before leaving, however, Yeho advises Seungwon not to invite Sion to his upcoming match, and that if he's curious as to why, Seungwon should call the number on his business card. This incident made Seungwon realize just how little he knew about Sion. One thing he's sure of, though, is that his Hyung is definitely surrounded by weirdos. Later that evening, we see Sion gulping down a glass of some hard stuff, probably. Apparently, he's been like that for quite some time now, and Mr. Bartender is anxiously trying to convince him to stop already, as if he isn't making a living out of customers like this. But anyways, Sion is actually being too much. Suddenly, Sion excuses himself to go to the bathroom, despite obviously already staggering as he walks. Just as he left, though, Seung-won, who has now graduated from Sunbaek to Coach Sunbaek, calls Sion's phone. In the bathroom, Sion looks at himself in the mirror and reflects on the cause of his drunken state. It's frustrating for him that Yeho doesn't seem to care about what had happened before, although it seems like it's just him who couldn't move on. By the time he finally wobbled out of the bathroom, he made up his mind to get some workout done tonight. He needed to do something that would make him forget everything. When Sion got back to his seat by the bar, Mr. Bartender was trying to tell him that his coach just called. But then, some dude suddenly sat beside Sion and started flirting. The arrangement was just about done, and the two really have gone to do some midnight rodeo, when Seung-won suddenly appeared, looking all hot and intimidating as he told Sion that it was time to go home. Even though Sion and Seung-won are already in the streets, the older man is still making a fuss about not wanting to go home. Seung-won is doing a great job holding him back, though, while being as patient and understanding as he can. Still, he's not perfect, seeing as he's straight up doing things like groping gay guys in their pockets for car keys, without even being bothered one bit, which Sion scolded him good for. And although Seung-won apologized, Sion isn't buying it. In fact, the latter is on point in thinking that it was insincere, since the moment that his car keys were found, Seung-won had him thrown over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. But after Sion complained about having his lower body be in contact with Seung-won's upper, Won had to make changes to how he carried his Hee-young. Although it's still very much uncomfortable for Sion, at least there aren't any uncomfortable contacts. Once the two are finally settled in the car, Seung-won is still very gentle and patient. When Sion curiously asked if Seung-won had a license to drive, Seung-won assured him that he did. In fact, he has a lot of experience driving vans as well, so Sion doesn't have to worry about getting into an accident. Sion found this very attractive and even voiced it out. Although he also had to quickly play dumb when Seung-won noticed, not that the younger man seemed to really mind. Later that evening, getting Sion into the house is yet another struggle, since Seung-won insisted on carrying his Hee-young, bridal style this time, into his house. Despite Sion's insistence, he is still very much wobbling, and not totally sober at all. But really, Sion is struggling, because he's starting to feel hot with the way that Seung-won is carrying him. This alarms Seung-won to some extent, thinking that Sion is a perv, who gets hot whenever he's drunk, and reminded Sion not to do something like this again, since the world is such a dangerous place. Sion is quick to defend himself, though that it doesn't happen often, especially not with just anyone. It seems that Sion is the kind of drunk who mixes up his internal and external monologues, since he isn't holding back and letting Seung-won know just how much he's attracted to him. He even voiced out how he's going to play with himself, while thinking about Seung-won once he leaves for the night. Not that Sion really cared, or perhaps it's just because his brain isn't working properly. Anyways, it was a pretty wholesome conversation, which Sion tries to attempt to end by saying that he'll just booty call someone after Seung-won leaves. Of course, this is a big no-no in the housekeeper's book. This made Sion get worked up, since if it weren't for Seung-won suddenly showing up earlier, he would be already working some sweat by now with someone. Seung-won is pretty stubborn in making sure to keep his Hee-young safe, though, despite Sion being unreasonable. And so, he suddenly made an offer to help Sion's current predicament. At first, Sion thought that Seung-won meant to do the midnight workout together, but that wasn't it, at least for now. That's to say, Seung-won is willing to help Sion play with himself. Unabashedly, Seung-won exposes his upper body, showing Sion that he's serious with his offer to help. At this point, Sion didn't resist anymore, and just reminded Seung-won not to start feeling disgusted along the way, or else even someone like him would feel hurt. Seung-won assured him that seeing bananas is a daily occurrence for him, so Sion shouldn't worry about it. When Seung-won starts touching Sion to start whatever it is that should be starting, Sion stops him, and is suddenly having second thoughts. But Seung-won just told him it was already too late to back out. Eventually, it was Sion who held the helm. He instructs Seung-won to just gently touch him, and try his best not to look down as Sion himself plays with his banana. As for Seung-won, he did touch Sion here and there, and couldn't help but realize just how skinny Sion was. In fact, when he carried him in his arms earlier, he estimated that Sion weighed about 60 kilograms, which is way less than what should be, given how tall he is. This observation made Sion reflect that in the future, he should also make plans regarding Sion's diet. As an afterthought, Sion also couldn't help but think that perhaps Sion had worked as a model or something before. Not just his build, but his face is also screaming celebrity after all. Woo is starting to get attracted to that face. Anyways, not long after, Sion is finally satisfied with himself, and Sion helps him get into a comfortable position in his bed. This time, Sion's drunken tactlessness is also starting to get into Sion. Well, this is not a BL manhwa for nothing. While Sion was helping Sion clean himself a bit, the older man promised Sion he'd buy him something nice next time, not that Sion really wanted it. Although when Sion insisted, Sion instead told him that there was just something he wanted to ask Sion about. Sion promises to answer it, although that would be for later, since right now he needs sleep. As Sion drifts to dreamland, Sion can't help starting to feel some attraction towards his Hee-young. And it doesn't help that Sion seemed to be really comfortable and unguarded when he was with him. Going back to that afternoon when Yeho met Sion in the parking lot, remembering the scene where Sion protectively stood in front of Sion, Yeho couldn't help but think that their relationship between the two might become troublesome on his part. And so, just in case, Yeho informs Hajin how he had run into Sion. The following day, as Yeho arrives at his office, Hajin is already there waiting for him, eager to get any news about his Hee-young. And so, over some takeout coffee, Yeho explained to Hajin what had happened between him and Sion. Yeho offered to give Hajin Sion's contact number, although the latter refused. Hajin believes that Sion would just feel awkward if Hajin did contact him through that. For one, he knows that Sion has a valid reason for not telling him anything, and for suddenly disappearing like that on them. In the end, Hajin just requested Yeho for something. In a different part of the city, it was an intense workout time for Sion, and something that the young man welcomed. Still, his co-trainee noticed that he's more motivated today than usual, and wonders if it's got something to do with the scouting agent he met yesterday. Looking back to yesterday, a lot of things did happen, and most, if not all, involved Sion. He seems so vulnerable in Sion's eyes. Although he doesn't have any idea about what happened between Sion and Yeho, Sion would still want to be of help to his Hee-young. Genuinely and without hesitation, just like how Sion did when he helped Sion back at the police station. Speaking of helping Sion, he did help him last night. Anyways, remembering what happened last night, Sion sent Sion a message as soon as he could, asking how he was doing and all. When he didn't get a reply, Won thought that perhaps Sion was still not up. At the same time, he's now determined more than ever to have his Hee-young cut his drinking habits and also arrange for his diet plan. Meanwhile, contrary to what Sion thought, Sion is already awake, although he's very much reflecting on the things that he did last night. He's so embarrassed that he even considered getting a lethal dose of something right now to end everything. What Sion regrets most, however, is that perhaps Sion now hates him. In fact, what Sion probably wanted to ask about last night is about the trashy way he's been living his life up until now. Sion started crying as he reflected on the fact that he was always cutting good people off his life. It's not even because of what they do, but just because of what he does himself. Sion's self-loathing was cut short when he heard someone open his front door and someone's voice started calling for him. Sion then puts on something decent and heads for the entrance, wondering who it might be, since Sion isn't supposed to come today for work. Sion was surprised when he saw Sion there. The latter explained that he knew Sion probably hadn't eaten anything yet, and so he brought some hangover soup for him. Sion even helped serve the soup for Sion, all the while telling him that he really should cut on his drinking. Not wanting to feel awkward about the things he had been crying over just minutes ago, Sion acted as if he didn't remember what had happened last night and lied through his teeth that the last thing he remembered was Sion picking him up. When Sion tried to probe about what had happened after that, Sion just said that it was all hazy. For some reason, this made Sion upset. In Sion's eyes, though, if Sion seemed disappointed and angry with his behavior last night. That's not exactly it, though. It's just that now Sion thinks that Sion has an alcohol-related dementia. Not exactly the word I'd use, but whatever one. Anyways, at least now Sion had the perfect excuse to make Sion stop drinking. Using his authority as Sion's trainer, Sion tells his trainee to stop drinking and to take exercising more seriously from now on. And that's why we don't lie, ladies and gentlemen. Fast forward to a few days later. Sion is in the middle of the street being ogled on by a bunch of people, not to mention approached by some scouts. He was reflecting on the fact that because of what happened, he couldn't even take back his lie about not remembering what happened between them. On the bright side, he'll just take it as an opportunity to cut back on his nightlife. Shortly after, Sion arrives and calls out to him. It seems that today the two of them are going to the department store to buy some sports gear. And seeing as this is Sion's first time going to one, he was a bit conscious seeing Sion all dressed up. Although, that's just something of a Sion thing, and not because of where they were going. Speaking of clothes, seeing Sion in casual clothes also made Sion realize that what the young man usually wore was the standard sweatshirt, pants, and shoes, although he could remember him in casual clothes the first time they met. In fact, if memory serves him right, Sion is wearing the same clothes right now. Sion just didn't think much of it, since he's usually just focused on one's physique as a whole. I mean, those abs are indeed mouth-watering. Well, perhaps one is just not big on fashion, or maybe he couldn't afford to buy clothes. It isn't nice to ask that, though, although maybe he wouldn't mind if Sion told him that he wants to buy some tracksuits for one as well, while they're shopping for his. Anyway, the first thing they tried on was some shoes, which, contrary to what Sion was expecting, were super light and comfortable, not to mention cheap. Later on, Sion started trying on some tracksuits, which, in Sion's opinion, were totally Sion style. And so Sion tells Sion to try them on, as well in his size. At first, one tries to refuse, saying that it's usually hard to find clothes that fit him, but seeing as they went to a store that specializes in big sizes, it wasn't really a problem. With the help of the very accommodating clerk, Sion orders all the items he tried on earlier in Sion's size, including the shoes. One is hesitant at first, although Sion smoothly makes an excuse that he just wants to see Sion try them on. After trying the first pair and seeing as it looked good on him, Sion wanted to make one try some other items. But once again, the young man hesitates, admitting that he feels bad to try them on when he's not even going to buy anything. This puts Sion in a spot since from the start, he already meant to buy everything for Sion. This awkwardness, however, was quickly dismissed when more items started coming in, and Sion made Sion try them on. Although in the back of his head, Sion did worry that buying them for Sion might hurt his pride or something. Anyways, seeing Sion in full gear, Sion couldn't help but get excited. Everything suited one. That, and also because he saw that not only one's hands and feet are big, but it also includes that thing dangling below his yummy-licious abs. And so, without saying anything, Sion tells the clerk to pack all the items he tried on earlier, plus a set in Sion's size as well. Whoa! They're not a couple yet, but they already have a couple of outfits. As expected, though, Sion is quick to decline this, insisting that he doesn't need all that stuff. But by now, Sion already has the perfect excuse. Sion tells Sion that the cheapest rate for a personal trainer is around 70,000 won, and yet Sion is giving it to him for free. Sion tries to explain that he's doing it because Sion refuses to take the lawyer fee from Sion's case. But of course, Sion isn't giving him a chance. Sion then added that since Sion is a national athlete, even doubling the cheapest rate for a personal trainer is not enough, and yet Sion still doesn't take anything, which Sion is just not comfortable with. After a couple of back and forth, Sion finally gives in and compromises with the thought that he'll just have to work harder from now on. Shortly after, Sion went to pay for their stuff, during which Sion handed Sion a black envelope that he explained was from Yeho. On their way back from shopping, Sion inquired about Yeho showing up again, although it seems like it's just an excuse to make contact with Sion. It's a given that Sion would find a way to criticize Yeho, although other than Sion's hostility, there's not much fault to be found, especially about how he manages the athletes in his company. Well, seeing as even Sion can vouch about how serious Yeho is about sports, Sion was reminded of the answer that Sion promised to him the night he got so drunk. Sion played dumb, of course, and there's nothing much that Sion can do about it. In the end, one just compromises and asks Sion to grant him a wish when he wins a gold medal in his upcoming competition. This made Sion rather anxious about what one would ask, and the younger man being all secretive wasn't making it better. Sion still agreed to it though, up until one added that he wants a wish granted for every gold medal he wins. As it turns out, he's participating in 5 events, which means 5 possible wishes. That's 2 more than the blue guy does. Heh. Then again, 5 is better than 20, which is the usual streak for competitive swimmers. So Sion really had no choice but to go through with it. Sion does have doubts, but Woo is pretty confident about his skills. Fast forward to the first day of the competition. Sion arrived late at the natatorium, although he was still right in time for Seungwon's race. Not only was it the first time that Sion watched his swimming competition in person, but it was also the first time that he saw Seungwon race, and he was very impressed with the way that Woo carried himself. Once the race finally started, all Sion could do was silently wish his housekeeper the best. Amidst all the cheering, Seungwon was off to a great start and was in the lead. In fact, he never lost his place despite after several laps. As expected, he was the first one to take off his goggles as well, marking the end of the race with him in the first place, not to mention making it with a Korean record too. As Sion watched Seungwon bathe in his win, he couldn't help but realize how different Seungwon seemed right now. Like swimming is his calling in life or something. After all, people who are living their dreams are completely different. By the end of the day, Seungwon went to meet with Sion excitedly. Sion apologized for not buying at least a bouquet to congratulate his win. It's just that he didn't really think that Seungwon would actually win, and a gold medal at that. But really, Woo is just really happy that Sion went to cheer for him. After all, even his family couldn't make it because they were busy. In fact, just knowing that Sion might be there in the audience motivated Seungwon to do his best. Well, that's all for the better since Sion decided that he'll stay and watch until Seungwon's last match. This, of course, made Seungwon really happy, and he promised to treat Seungwon to a meal after his last match. Later that evening, once Sion was back at his hotel room, he and Seungwon exchanged a brief text conversation, after which Sion watched the broadcast of today's match. Although he was there in person, it was still a bit different watching it on an official recording, where the commentators' words could be heard. As expected, all they had was praise for Seungwon, especially after he broke the national record that the supposedly best swimmer in the country today has. Hearing that, Sion regretted not giving Seungwon a more enthusiastic congratulations earlier. Sion's interest is piqued by this sport, probably because someone he knows is excelling at it. And what better way to learn about something than to go online, right? Going through comments from the netizens regarding Seungwon's achievements, Sion realized just how talented he is, to the point that it's really frustrating how he's still not famous. Speaking of being famous, Sion also read the news about the 2 most popular swimmers, and supposedly the best in the country. At least, that's what the masses are led to believe, but Sion had his eyes opened and knew better. Not to mention, none of them could even compare to Woo's face, that even the great Sion couldn't resist. The second day of the competition came. This time, Sion arrived early in the natatorium and watched all the matches. While in the audience, Sion also learned a lot about competitive swimming in general, including the different techniques, such as the most popular freestyle and Seungwon's specialty, butterfly. As Sion was already informed, even though An Chae-hwan and Lee Pi-yoon-ki overshadows Seungwon, freestyle is also one of Seungwon's specialties. As for the matches that day, Seungwon participated in the 200 IM and 200 freestyle, bagging the gold medal for both. Even though the race was not broadcast live, everyone could see just how capable Seungwon was. He stood out among all the swimmers. In fact, the distance between Woo and his runners-up is too wide as well. Once Sion was back in his hotel, his stalking continued, making sure to save all the eye-catching pictures of his housekeeper as he did. Sion also started getting ideas of asking Seungwon to teach him swimming in his free time. As the idea came up, he started looking for a swimsuit that he should buy first, if ever, only to realize just how expensive a piece is, especially since you should buy a new one after just using it once or twice, since it gets worn out. After reflecting that he should have bought Seungwon a swimsuit instead of a tracksuit, Sion sent Song-tae a message, asking if they had clothes in Seungwon's size. Unfortunately, the closest they have is a double XL. That evening, Seungwon sent his Hyun a message, reminding him of the meal he promised at the end of his final match. This kind of made Sion a bit uncomfortable, seeing as it should have been the other way around, and he should have been the one treating Woo instead. Anyways, the third and final day of the competition arrived. Sion is fully prepared this time, and is even intent on recording the race on his phone. Much to his surprise and delight, Seungwon found where he was and waved happily in his direction. Soon after, the race began. Seungwon didn't disappoint. In fact, at the end of the 100-meter freestyle race, he once again set a new national record. In fact, it was a record that one would usually see in national and international competitions, Even the commentators were so excited about it, as if it's not something that often happens. Anyways, whatever it is, the competition ended with Seungwon winning all the promised gold medals. Later that day, Sion was just about to leave when Yeho caught him and asked why he was there. Sion explained that it was because of Seungwon, although it's not like it's any of Yeho's business. Whatever the reason, maybe, though, Yeho urgently tells him to leave immediately, and even grumbled about already warning Seungwon about inviting Sion today, much to Sion's confusion. Suddenly, Yeho noticed that the interview with a certain someone was just over, and so, without another word, he started dragging Sion out of there. Just in time, Seungwon noticed Sion being taken away and called out to him. Sion also noticed and looked at the direction Seungwon was in, only to get shocked at the sight of a man from behind him. Memories of the said man came back. There was a time when the said man had offered Sion a drink, when he had just turned adult, not knowing that it was spiked. Back to the present, Sion is hyperventilating. Yeho did his best to assist Sion, and just in time for Seungwon to reach them. At first, Seungwon thought that it was because of something that Yeho did, although the older man was quick to explain that it wasn't his fault. Without saying much, Yeho just told Seungwon to hide Sion, so that he wouldn't be seen from the direction of where the Vice Minister of Culture, Sports, and Tourism is. Sion was trembling as he mumbled words of resistance that seemed to have been brought up by trauma upon seeing the man from earlier. Yeho tried his best to calm Sion down, while Seungwon made sure to completely cover his Hyun. In fact, Seungwon stood so close that even Yeho got uncomfortable. Anyways, once the party of the Vice Minister was gone, Seungwon took Sion from Yeho's hold. Won tells Sion that they're gone now, and he'll take him back to his hotel so he can rest. Sion went to his side without any resistance, and Seungwon curtly bid goodbye to Yeho, not missing to make a point that Yeho's presence is no longer needed or wanted. Nevertheless, Seungwon did not forget to thank him. Once they arrived in the room, Sion just silently went further inside, ignoring Seungwon's concerns. Seeing as Sion's body felt cold, Seungwon decided that taking a warm bath would do him good. And so, Won prepared it for him, all the while wondering what could have happened to Sion in the past. Well, Yeho seemed to know about it, which reminds him of the time when Yeho told him not to invite Sion. Somehow, he regretted not listening to Yeho at that time. But anyways, what's done is done. He should just ask Sion about it later, once he feels better. After Seungwon finished preparing the bath, he went to look for Sion, only to see him with a bottle of hard stuff in his hand. In fact, Sion is already pretty drunk by then, and he's misinterpreting Seungwon's words into asking his Hyun to take a bath with him. Sion is more than willing to share that bath that he even started getting on his birth suit. As for Seungwon, although he's surprised by Sion's bold move, he's still more concerned about the fact that the older man is drunk. Seungwon was just about to start lecturing, but Sion beat him to it with a perfect excuse, if you call being emotional an excuse. Anyways, Sion started throwing a tantrum, especially when Seungwon just silently looked at him without saying anything. Sion insists that it's a given to drink if someone is feeling down, plus it's already been a while since he last had a drink. Soon after, Sion started crying unconsciously, sending Seungwon into a panic. Sion is obviously so upset, and because of the alcohol, he can't even control his emotions anymore. The only thing Seungwon can do now is to hug Sion and try to calm him down, just like how he tries to calm down his brother Seungmin when he's upset. Although Seungwon's actions are having an effect, they also lead to Sion figuring out what exactly he has to do at the moment, which is to get wild with someone. Innocent and pure little Won thought that Sion simply wanted to take a bath when he said that he wanted to do it. But of course, that really isn't it. Putting his shirt back on, the staggering Sion was just about to head out when Seungwon suddenly asked if he should do what he did like last time. And since Sion is out of it, he already forgot to keep up his lie and tattled himself up about not remembering what happened last time. Anyways, Sion made it clear that he wants some real action, and not just to get off. But Seungwon still insisted that he wanted to help him. In fact, he even went ahead and asked if it was actually possible to do it between men. This flustered Sion, and just to be clear, asked Seungwon if he really wanted to do it with him. Won explained that if he didn't do it, then Sion would just try to do it with some rando. After all, Sion can get really careless whenever he's drunk. Who knows what kind of creep he's going to pick up somewhere? Ha! And his nickname is Sunbeck. This kid is clearly an experienced playboy, Anyways, by the looks of it, Sion is clearly interested in this idea, although he's having second thoughts. After all, this is Sion we're talking about who clearly cares for him and wants to make him feel better. As of the moment, what he needs is something that will give him pain. He's at a point in his life where nothing could ever make him feel better. He'd rather wallow in misery and feel pain. But then again, if he does do it with Sion and regrets it later, that should be perfect for him. That way, he can just hate himself more after. With that excuse, Sion asked Sion again if he wanted to do it with him. Without hesitation, Won said yes. After drinking a glass of water, Sion started discarding his clothes one by one as he explained to Won that he's usually the one who tops. Although Sion can keep it up and alert, he doesn't mind being the receiver this time. Of course, innocent little Won doesn't really know what that's supposed to mean, and Sion had to teach him step by step. Sion explains that as long as Sion can keep his sword up, he'll take care of the rest. Well, they're off to a good start, since it seems like it's already bulging. In fact, even Sion found the size huge, and he's doubting if he can take it. Then again, it's not like he's doing this to feel good. Plus, he'd never experienced feeling good whenever he plays the bottom. Without another word, Sion declares that he'll give Sion a service first. Not long after, Won started feeling it, and even found Sion cute as he did. But Sion really didn't care. He's really just in a hurry to start doing the main event. Now that Won's bedtime is on full alert, it's time for Sion to prepare himself. Although he's doing this to punish himself, it's not to the point where he's okay for tomato sauce to be seen. Squirting some stuff in his hand and using it on his black hole, the action made Won curious and asked about it. Sion once again explained that since it's been a while since he was at bottom, he had to prepare his back. Won innocently asked if he could see it, once again making Sion flustered. Then again, he knows that Sion isn't really into plays and is simply just curious. No, really, I'm telling you, Won is a closet perv, which just makes him more delicious. Anyways, Sion granted him a front seat view. In fact, Sion even went ahead and touched the entrance himself, curiously asking if his baton would even fit on something so small and if it would hurt. Sion dismisses such concerns and just tells Won that it's okay and he should just do what he's supposed to do. The first try they did, it just won't get in. Sion looked like he was really struggling, to the point that Won had to intervene. Even he can tell that Sion is in pain, so, of course, he has to put a stop to it, despite Sion's insistence. Only this led to Won giving an impromptu lecture about how stretching is important when exercising, which is what doing the nasty is all about. The lecture was starting to turn off Sion, although Won was quick to put him on edge again. Won suddenly invaded the cave, using his finger to help prepare it himself. It was so long that even just one finger was already affecting Sion. Anyway, as Sion encouraged, one finger became 2 and finally 3. When Sion asked if Won didn't feel disgusted, the latter said no. And the fact that his sword is on full alert still, it doesn't seem like he's lying. Won then explained that if it was somebody else and not someone as beautiful as Sion, then perhaps he might feel disgusted. Sion was just about to tell him off when Won's fingers suddenly reached Sion's sweet spot. Seeing as it's just a lump in Won's limited knowledge of male anatomy, his immediate thought was that something was wrong with Sion. But see, it's not yet time to educate our innocent Won on such things. And so, before Sion starts feeling weird and defeating the whole purpose of doing this in the first place, the older man demands that Won take out his finger. Sion couldn't help but feel amazed. After all, of all the guys he'd been with before, none of which had ever reached his sweet spot. Anyways, now that his entrance was ready, Sion took the lead and tried once again. This time it went in easier, although Sion was afraid of going all the way, since it would mean that Won's baton would reach his spot again. As Sion tried his best to make things work for the two of them, his thoughts also lingered about feeling bad for Won, like his first time was with someone like him. However, it seems like it's just Sion who's feeling any regrets on this, since Won even asked if he could kiss Sion as they did it. Sion didn't deny him this, although it just added to the list of things he's feeling sorry about for Won. Although soon after, Sion started liking the kiss, since Won was doing it so gently and whatnot. So, is it wrong for me to assume that our little Won is a notorious perv in his previous life? It is pretty evident from the way that Won caresses Sion that he's a natural at this. In fact, Sion felt so good that he finished by himself first. Feeling bad about it, Sion didn't refuse when Won said that he wanted to take the reins this time around. Only, he warned Won not to put it all the way in, insisting that it's because it'll hurt him if it does, but we all know it's just because it'll take him to the edge again. For the second time that night, while they were doing the thing, Won praises Sion again for being good-looking, earning him a scolding from his Hyung. That said, Won is so in the zone that he's starting to drill in deeper, much to Sion's dismay, although Won didn't go all the way in. The distance he covered was already enough to reach Sion's sweet spot and, in return, made Won notice that doing so wasn't really causing Sion pain, as he had claimed. Anyways, not long after it was Won's turn to release his tartar sauce, and even doing it inside the cave. Not that Sion minded. In fact, Sion himself demanded another round right after, despite already looking so tired. Fast forward to when Sion is finally sleeping peacefully. Won watches over him, amazed that Sion managed to do all the stuff that they did, despite his weak stamina. He wondered if perhaps that's just how Sion is, always pushing himself until the very end. On a different note, from what Sion knows of Sion, the latter is not someone who easily folds, making him wonder just what happened to Sion in the past, that he's become so closed off like this.